Hi, everybody, and welcome to Cold Reads, episode 17. I am Laura Nicole, your wonderful host, and we are going to be reading chapter 13, part 1 of Stonebriar Casefiles. Now, I am flying solo tonight, and there are a couple of reasons. First is that I was unprepared and didn't send out invitations for tonight, which was my bad. And secondly, I've been having a migraine, so the sooner I can go to bed, the sooner I'll feel better. So we're going to go ahead and get started real quick. I do want to let you know that the show is presented by Resonant Moon Audiobook Solutions. You can check us out at resonantmoon.com. And so, yeah, we're going to go through chapter 13, or at least part 1 of chapter 13, and go from there. So to recap, as I pull up the document as always, so we are following Beatrix Stonebriar, who has returned to the Elderwood to await the trial of Jack Haggerty Sr., her partner, her detective colleague, who attempted to kill her in the human world. And she has found 7 baby fae strewn about her doorstep when she arrives back into the Elderwood. So she goes along with some of her friends from her former group called The Watch to figure out who did this horrendous crime. Upon further investigation, meeting both with elves and goblins and other fae, they uncovered that the culprits were using runes that were not exactly what the perpetrators intended them to be. They were runes for change. When they finally apprehended the 2 that were responsible, Alina and Jack Haggerty Jr., she realized through the scrolls that were stolen that they were concocting something called Derir Tri Rune, which means conform through ruin. This is to be done with a potion to be consumed by the instrument for change, which was held at Beatrix Stonebriar's home, the Stonebriar. Upon gathering the elders of the Fae, Vervain Oakroot and Rixen Amberstone, they were able to discover that the different ingredients that were used and how to try and contain the concoction. But now they are seeking the help of the trolls for guidance as to how to counteract this cursed potion. One thing to note is that Rixen Amberstone does have a grudge against the races that live underground due to the death of his daughter, and they were unwilling to help rescue her. So now we are going to move forward with part 1 of chapter 13. Go meet with the trolls. Get the trolls to create a counter curse. Make sure Rixen doesn't make things worse with racial slurs. Save the Elderwood and try not to get anyone else killed in the process. All in 2 days or less. Sure, piece of cake. Who was I kidding? I had brought convicted magics out into the human realm and rehabilitated them to become productive members of society. That seemed easier than this little quest. And I had 2 years to complete that one. As we came upon the entrance to Troll's Hollow, a large, open stone gate awaited us. From a distance, it looked like a crude mock-up of Stonehenge. But as I inspected the structure closely, I was once again in awe of the trollish crafts craftsmanship. Trolls are, for all intents and purposes, artists. They typically craft things that can create mischief or calamity, but sometimes they create objects to inspire. This gate was one such structure. Monoliths, the size of a giant's toe, and their connecting stones of equal size seemed darkened and covered in graffiti. Upon further examinations, what looked like drawings were actually engravings. Every few inches, I could make out one or two runes, which were part of larger designs, which also created other subtle runes. This work of art was full of care and detailed craftsmanship. I had no doubt there was some magic in it. Too. Turek was the first to enter, and he passed through the gate with no ill effects. Rixon and I made to enter together, but as we crossed, we hit a point of resistance. We pushed against it with growing force until we were finally both thrown back. My mentor tried again, while I hung back to see what would happen. As he flew over the earthen threshold, the glyphs in the stone began to glow. I could see a barrier forming from the edges of the stone. The light that radiated off of it looked like stretched elastic. Once again, he was flung back to where I floated, my wings treading the air. "What happened?" Turek called. "There's some kind of barrier. We can't get through," I answered. The opening to the hollow was only a few human feet behind Turek. I could see a shadow stir and make its way forward. A hooded figure stood in the light of the setting sun. I suddenly realized that we had been traveling most of the day. We did not have time for such delays. The figure took off his cloak and revealed the crooked, elongated, and gnarled features of the gatekeeper. The tusks that extended out from his lower jaw were weathered and not as sharp as some other trolls I had come to know. But no doubt he was one of the great elders. When he opened his mouth, the familiar raspy accent took me a moment to adjust to. "Trolls are not so trusting as to let in the nefarious sky treaders to come intruding upon our lands." Trolls were smart and wanted to prove it in their speech. It didn't do much for their breath, though. He looked us over from a distance. When he wasn't able to make out who we were, he beckoned us closer to the gate. He closed the gap as well. "My apologies, gatekeeper. It has been many years since I last met with your people, and I had forgotten about your precautions," I said. The gatekeeper smiled as he recognized me. "Ah, Stonebriar of the Watch. You are known to us and welcome." I bowed and indicated for Rixon to follow. "Not you, Amberstone of the Fae. Long have your words done us injury with false accusations. Longer still have you denied us and claimed to others that we were lesser beings. Why then should we, who have been wronged by you, allow your hateful tongue to enter our halls?" Rixon looked abashed. "I know that what I have said is not what is truth. It grieves me to have wronged you and your people so out of blindness. A hope to save all of the Elder Wood, including the Hollow of Trolls, from a terrible fate, brings me here." Considering how quiet he had been during the whole trip, I can only assume that he had been trying to formulate this formal apology. The gatekeeper considered him. Then, with a wave of his hand, he removed the barrier in a brief flash. Together, we both went into Troll's Hollow to join Turek. We attempted to inform the gatekeeper about the curse and what was needed, but he held up his hand. "It is not for me to hear you out. You must meet with the Alchemist Guild. It is for them to decide if they will give you aid." He led us into the tunnels. As we traveled down the halls, small lanterns lit our way. They gave a green hue to the surroundings, but was bright enough to see where you were going. I remembered having it explained to me that if the lights were to go out or suddenly be lit, it was less painful for it to be a color than a typical white light. The four of us did not speak much. Even the fluttering of our wings seemed to echo off of the walls around us. So I could only imagine what talking would do. We passed various corridors that opened to laboratories. The telltale sounds of boiling liquids in glass containers emanated from these spaces. Occasionally, a troll would be scribbling notes and muttering to themselves. In one lab, we saw an alchemist contentedly watching a young troll mixing a brew. "Hold the vial steady," she said in a soft crackle. "The liquids shall flow smoothly, together like a dance, so that they can mix together properly." We passed before I could see the result, but the child's hands were shaking. We shortly heard a muffled crack and a cry from the troll child. I could just make out the instructor saying, "Wonderful! You've made your first failure. There will be many more, but that makes success sweeter. Now then, start cleaning up." I smiled to myself. Many times I had heard something similar from my adopted mother as I would go through each different task that a fairy could do. When I failed at growing something, she would simply lift my chin and look at me in the eyes. Then she would whisper, "Not to worry, dear. This is just narrowing down the options to find what you do well." The memory conjured moisture in my eyes. I hadn't realized how much I missed her. I was hesitant to wipe the tears away. Admitting that I was a feeling individual felt good, even in this brief moment. Before I knew it, we had reached a closed door. The gatekeeper turned and addressed us. "Wait here for a moment while I make your presence known to the guild." With that, he pushed open the grand doors and slipped into the room. The door was left ajar, and red light spilled through, contrasting with the light from the halls. The light flickered, and I realized that it was likely due to firelight. They were, after all, a guild of alchemists. I started to move forward to peek through the door, but Turek stopped me with his hand. The caked mud scratched through my furs. "Ow!" I hissed. He shook his head in reply. "They'll be watching us to see if we will eavesdrop. Just wait," he whispered. "They will come out when it is time." Most of the time, I forgot this was where Turek was from. Troll and goblin culture was very similar. They were protective of their projects and inventions, and didn't want these secrets and didn't want to share these secrets with unwanted eyes. As good as his word, the gatekeeper returned and opened the door to the red room wider. "The guild will hear you now," he said as he ushered us in. The room was as large as a cathedral. There were floors upon floors scaling up the walls, each with its own workstation and furnace. As loud as the room should have been, all was quiet. Only the light sound of bubbles could be heard amongst the crackling of the main furnace in front of us. At each station were one or two trolls looking over the railings. All easels and workboards were covered so as to conceal their secrets. The trolls themselves ranged in age, gender, and stature. All of them were great minds that worked to create new ways to alter, change, destruction, or creation. And all of them had their eyes on the three of us. I straightened and took the lead. It seemed a little unnatural, as typically I deferred to Rickson, but he was not welcome here. On the main floor of the guild hall was the Congress of Five. I had heard of them. They were appointed by the masses as the most accomplished and reasonable in the application of their arts. Most were younger trolls, and one central figure was one that I recognized. He was a little grayer with his ear. He was a little gray here. He was a little grayer, and his ear hair was longer. But Gablo the Fierce was the one who stepped forward to greet me. Stonebriar, long has it been since the flutter of your wing. Long has it been since we heard the flutter of your wings. He held out his hand, and I shook the tip of his finger. Trolls had excessively long fingers to match their exaggerated long faces, ears, and tusks. Too long, Gablo, but I'm afraid that I come with dark tidings. The muttering of the trolls did not escape my notice. No doubt, both the Congress of Five and Turek could hear the trolls above, could hear every word that was said. Two youths have taken a scroll and proceeded to cast the spell upon it. They thought it would bring change to join the world of magics with the human realm. Such a thought is noble, but no spell or potion exists to our knowledge that can change the minds of others without the use of blood, and good cannot spring from such an act of ferocity. His voice was grave. I bowed my head, trying to think of the best words that would match their grammar and syntax. We know. After looking over the scroll, they have derived their spell from. We have translated it to mean conform through ruin. His dark eyes widened, and the white pupils were full as the harvest moon. Derrière tree ruin. The room was full of darkened gasps and horrified mumbles from the observatory above. How did these younglings come to possess such dangerous material? It was stolen. One of the other trolls from the Congress fumed. Taken without permission? My fellows, please calm yourselves. Goblo's voice boomed and echoed, leaving the other alchemists murmuring rather than shouting. We will hear out the entire story before we go about setting judgment. As learned and just as Miss Stonebriar is, it is likely that there is a deliberate reason for her visit, and that those responsible will receive suitable punishment. He turned his gaze on me and nodded for me to continue. Honorable members of the Alchemist Guild. Well, that was a good start. I hoped I could keep up the speech pattern. It has come to my companions and I to beseech your assistance. From this curse, we are all in perilous danger. We need the ingenious ferocity of your minds and keen skills to help create a counterspell to keep the poison from killing our homes and all those who live in the Elderwood. And that is it for part 1 of chapter 13. I hope you enjoyed it. What I will say is that if you are recording and you know you're not feeling well, whether it's a migraine or a cold or a sore throat or you're just feeling under the weather, I would recommend not recording. And I say this for a good reason, that it will come through. No matter how great of an actor you are, unless I don't even know if there is an unless, but it comes through in the recording that you're, the phrase I like to use, I like to steal from Alice in Wonderland and say, you've lost a bit of your muchness in it. Even the most practiced voice actors can have off days. And as you heard me yawning probably and having some difficulties, you know, it's probably not the best idea to record when you're feeling under the weather. So that being said, I really like this. I really like the trolls because the way that they're written, and I'm not really trying to toot my own horn. I took some of my inspiration for the way that trolls look in this book from the game Red Dragon Inn. There is a picture of a character named Frank the Alchemist, and that was my inspiration for this society. And Frank has long nose, and he's got long tusks coming up from his lower lip. He's got long ears, long fingers. Also, if you like games where you can screw over your friends, Red Dragon Inn is a great game. I thoroughly enjoy it, but if you are a more of a cooperative player game, it's probably not for you. But so I got that visually, and so for voicing trolls, it makes it a little interesting because you have to imagine that you've got two tusks coming up from your lip. So you talk without using much of your lower lip, and that makes it a little bit different, and you get a little bit of an English accent as well. But if you imagine that you don't have much of a lower lip and only use it to enunciate really hard consonants like b and t, well, you get the gist. Your lower lip, or my lower lip, is pretty numb with that. Unlike the other people who've done Turek, I do him a little more American, a little less menacing. Not to say that I haven't enjoyed everybody else who's done Turek. I think that the different variations are fantastic. And I'm really enjoying that aspect, is to get other people to be these characters, to see how people interpret these characters based on the cues I give them. I'm waiting for somebody to do a Gomez Adams on Eric Moonrunner when he comes back. So tomorrow I am hoping to have a friend from across the Atlantic to join me, but we'll see how scheduling works out, and then we will go from there. So thank you so much for watching Cold Reads. This show is brought to you by Resonant Moon Audiobook Solutions. You can find us online at resonantmoon.com for all of your audiobook and podcast production needs. I do QC, so making sure that the audio matches the script. I do editing, I do mixing, and if you have a podcast where you need some of the fat trimmed off of it, I do that too. Let's see here. I have notes. I am actually prepared, even though I didn't prepare a guest for today. If you would like to be a part of Cold Reads, you can submit either an inquiry for a short story. We're going to start doing short stories starting in September, which is fast approaching. And if you want to be a voice, if this is your first time voice acting, or you're a seasoned voice actor that just wants to do a cold read for ha-has, if you've been out of the game for a while and you want to get back into it, my show seems to be a good place to do that. So go ahead and send me an email. The email is Laura Nicole Audio, LauraNicoleAudio @gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. I created a Facebook group for everybody to interact. And that's facebook.com/groups/cold reads. If you want spoilers for Stonebriar Casefiles, the link is in the show notes, and you can buy my book, maybe, or you can hang out and watch each show, and that's good for me too. You can follow me on Twitter @LNicoleAudio. I usually talk about Dungeons, Dragons, and Critical Role, and that's about it. And this show, obviously. But I'm happy to interact with anybody who has questions or just wants to tell me that they have a cool story, and then I'll tell you to email me. I do want to let you know that this show is covered under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License, which means you can download it, you can share it, you can post it elsewhere. Just don't edit it, because it's perfect just the way it is, just like you. And make sure that you link back to this YouTube page. If you like what I'm doing and you want to show me some love, leave some comments or subscribe. Once we get to 20 subscribers, I will do a happy dance again. I did one at 10 subscribers. I will totally do one at 20. And we're getting there. I'm up to 12, but my dad was the last one that subscribed. So thanks, Dad. And you know, if you're at conventions and you know that I'm there, come and say hi to me. I wanted to go to Gen Con, but just couldn't work out the scheduling, so I'm going to try to go to others because I like interacting with people and meeting new people and such. That is it for me. So I will see you tomorrow. I will try to post what time ahead of time. But thank you all so much for joining me, and be awesome. Good night, everybody.